Welcome, everyone. My name is Sarah Ray from the Bloomfield Public Library. Thank you for joining us today. We're excited to have Shana Griffin back to educate us about the anti-inflammatory diet. Shana, it's all yours.
Yay! Hello, everybody. I'm Shana Griffin, registered dietitian. I'm also an integrative and functional nutrition practitioner. I see some faces that I recognize on here, so thank you for returning to these amazing nutrition educational programs through the library. Today's specific topic, I think, is a pretty hot topic, apparently. Everywhere you look, every magazine, searching a Google search, I feel like you're going to come up with the topic of anti-inflammatory diet or anti-inflammatory nutrition of some sort. So we're going to dive into talking about that today. It is a really huge topic that could take an entire series to break down into multiple different mini topics, but I'm going to really try to focus today specifically on just kind of the foundational aspects in relation to diet. So we're going to talk about what inflammation is, going to talk about what causes inflammation. We're going to talk about the different inflammation modulators. I'm going to talk about the anti-inflammation diet, different nutritional approaches to reduce inflammation, what you can start doing today, and learn more about different types of foods and nutrients, and even some specific products that you can add to your regimen to help with just all around your overall health, in taking into consideration inflammation. And hopefully, as I always say, gain some kind of inspiration from what, even if it's a small little piece that you take from today and that you can implement into your lifestyle to become the healthiest version of yourself. And if you've joined any of my other programs, I really always like to take a moment where we focus on our breathing. So over the next hour, focus on, really getting and listening to the information, maybe taking a couple of notes, but also focus on your breathing. So taking in some really deep breaths, holding it for like 4 or 5 seconds and slowly breathing in and out. That's going to help to naturally just reduce cortisol and stress, make you feel better. And cortisol is related to inflammation. We're going to talk briefly about that. So that's just one thing we can do to start. And also make sure if you don't have water, you grab your water and you have at least a cup, if not more, maybe 16 ounces of water throughout the next hour that we have together. We are made to thrive, not survive. So let's get the bang for your buck for the food that you purchase and what you put in your body. So, and when we talk about inflammation, we have to talk about and decipher the two different types of inflammation. And primarily, it could be acute or chronic. Acute inflammation is short-lived, either in response to an injury, an irritation, or an infection. It can last just a couple of minutes or up to a few days. And that would be something, if you've ever had an injury and you've experienced redness, swelling, heat, pain related to increased blood flow, and then, of course, accumulation of white blood cells. Those blood cells are going to that site to heal it. So the generation of new cells that promote the healing of damaged tissues. What we're going to really focus on today, though, is chronic inflammation. It's that long-term physiological response to one or more factors, and it really lasts, up to years of accumulating chronic inflammation. And we're going to dive deep into a few of these, but exposure to environmental toxins, microbial or viral infections, poor nutrition, stress, just the natural aging process. Of course, smoking and alcohol impact your health, and then physical activity, weight status, and sleep, just to really kind of name the foundational few of things that can affect that long-standing chronic inflammation. And the prolonged chronic inflammation generates those destructive reactions that damage cells and eventually lead to those clinical symptoms of an illness. So, as far as what I do as an integrative and functional nutrition practitioner, I really like to look at those specific symptoms and get to the root of the problem of why you're experiencing something versus just putting a Band-Aid on it with a particular medication that you would get, through your physician. So as a dietitian, really focusing in on the nutrition and some of the other things that can impact that are things that I like to educate about. So breathing, right? That was one simple thing that you probably wouldn't think a dietitian would emphasize, but it has an impact. So as far as chronic disease in America, 6 in 10 adults live with a chronic disease. 4 in 10 have 2 or more chronic disease, and the leading cause of death and disability drives healthcare costs up to over $3.8 trillion. And so you can see on the screen heart disease, cancer, lung disease, stroke, Alzheimer's, diabetes, and chronic kidney disease are some of the most costly diseases that impact most Americans and drive that really high healthcare cost. And that's a whole nother conversation in and of itself, just the healthcare costs. But every single one of these things that you see on the screen is very much diet related. So of course, lifestyle related, genetic related, but certainly nutrition related. You can see here how chronic inflammation can impact all of the different modalities of your body and all of the different organs, from your brain to your endocrine system, to your cardiovascular system, to your metabolic system. On a cellular level, inflammation drives each and every one of these components. So just take a look and read through some of those different diagnoses under each of those modalities. Bone, muscle, skeletal. So you can think of, rheumatoid arthritis, which is an entire separate class in and of itself. But that can cause joint pain. And so that is part of this chronic inflammation. And not to say that nutrition is going to solve all of your problems when it comes to rheumatoid arthritis or joint pain, but it certainly can play a role. So it's also linked to asthma, COPD, just the chronic pain I just mentioned, weight gain, autoimmune disorders, and thyroid dysfunction. And I always like to use this infographic here on oxidative stress, because when we talk about inflammation and we talk about diet and antioxidants and nutrients, the goal of consuming adequate nutrients, antioxidants, phytochemicals in the diet is to help reduce the oxidative stress, those free radicals that lead to chronic disease. So we really want to balance the antioxidants in our body so that those antioxidants go to healing your eyes, preventing you from getting disease, and going to your heart and your brain and your immune system so that you can function optimally. I like to say it's like filling your bucket. If you fill a bucket, right, with antioxidants, or let's say you fill a bucket with a lot of oxidative stress and environmental toxins and things like that, and it starts overflowing, then you have no leftover antioxidants to go and to prevent you from aging. So we want to limit that toxic bucket burden and focus on really filling it with as much antioxidants and good nutrition, and minimize the burden coming in so that it prevents us from aging. Again, you can see everything is very much interconnected. It can get kind of complicated, especially if you really are struggling with some symptoms that you're having a hard time figuring out and you don't really know what it is that's causing it. Everything is interconnected, and I feel like it's really important to seek out a practitioner that really understands the root cause approach to dig deep into figuring out exactly what it is that's going on. So what contributes to a pro-inflammatory lifestyle? You can probably think of some of the basics, but here we're going to talk and break down in a little bit more detail high sugar foods and how that affects blood sugar regulation and insulin resistance. High fat foods, especially saturated fats from animal foods. We're going to talk a little bit about food allergies and how those can form immune complexes and lead to inflammation. Foods that promote bacterial overgrowth. If you've ever heard me speak, no matter what the topic is, I'm probably going to talk about, foods that nourish your gut and those good for you probiotics that live within your digestive system. So insufficiency of fiber. Most people are just not getting enough good quality, real fiber that helps to act as like a broom to sweep all the things out. It's not just for, digestion. There's a lot of other things that fiber plays a role in, but insufficient phytonutrients. So not getting enough of those good quality, high antioxidant phytochemicals. Poor dental health. All I'm going to say right here is remember to floss. If you don't do a really good job at flossing daily, now is your time to put that on your list. Say, oh, you know what? I don't really do very well with that and I should do better. Insufficient exercise. An increase in adipose fat tissue is considered pro-inflammatory. And so when we talk about, I'm going to briefly speak about excessive calorie intake, taking in too much calories than you need does lead to a pro-inflammatory state. And having more muscle helps to reduce that inflammation, improve insulin sensitivity. Vitamin D deficiency can cause inflammation and promote vitamin D deficiency is just really linked to a lot of things. And unfortunately, most people that live in New England are deficient. So highly recommend that you get your levels checked. Fatty acid imbalances. I'm going to dive deep into the omega-3 and omega-6 ratio and what that means and how you can improve that in your lifestyle. Mineral deficiencies, especially magnesium. A lot of people are deficient in magnesium. And then environmental toxins. So, and when I speak about that, I mean like, drinking out of plastic, your storage containers, trying to switch to as much glass as possible, what you put on your body, things like that. And then emotional stress and toxic relationships certainly play a role. Being happy and having a good, healthy relationship is a huge part to that. That's a whole nother series in and of itself. And then high blood pressure, chronic disease, diabetes, just chronic disease in general does put you into a pro-inflammatory state. So the most significant contributors, just to break it down a little bit more in detail, is excessive calorie consumption, high glycemic loads, refined foods and oils, and carbohydrates and sugar. Saturated and specifically trans fatty acids or excessive saturated fats, caffeine, alcohol, insufficient intakes of those micronutrients and antioxidants, the low fiber diet, like I mentioned, sedentary lifestyle, being overweight, the environment, everything, even so grilling, we're in summertime. So grilling is an example of an environmental toxin that I'm speaking of. So anything that's charred on the grill, that creates heterocyclic amines, and that is a free radical to your body where you have to use up your bucket of good antioxidants that you're trying so hard to consume so that it can remove that, so that it doesn't lead to cancer. Those heterocyclic amines are known cancer-causing agents. And then endocrine disruptors, phytates, phthalates, BPA, all of the things like that that are in your hygiene care and even in food packaging, storageware, and then stress and cortisol. High levels of cortisol is pro-inflammatory, so we really want to try to focus on reducing that. So remembering to breathe just naturally helps. It's free. It just takes a little bit of mindfulness to remember to do that. And so that we want to minimize inflammation, again, just going in a little bit more in detail there. We're going to break all of this down, so I'm not going to review all of that right now. But what you see on this slide, I feel like it's just the foundational components to a healthy diet and a healthy lifestyle, right? These seems pretty basic, but I think that what we're going to review today is you're going to get a little bit more in detail with those impactful pieces that can really get your bang for your buck. If you've ever seen me speak before, you know how much I love to talk about eating the rainbow, lots of different colorful fruits and vegetables. These infographics here just give you a little bit of inspirations, because maybe you get stuck in a rut and you buy the same things all the time at the grocery store. So take a look and make sure that you're incorporating a couple of different colors from each food group, or excuse me, a couple of different foods from each color group, so that you don't have to think about, am I getting enough anthocyanin, which is the red color? Am I getting enough, chlorophyll from the green? You don't have to think about if you're getting enough of those nutrients, lycopene and all of the things. You just need to make sure that it's colorful and that you are getting a variety, and that is the best way to approach making sure that you're just getting a little bit of everything from a basic standpoint. And I like to think too, like some people say, oh yeah, you know what, like maybe I really need to focus on getting more vitamin C in the diet. People, when you think of vitamin C, I can guarantee everyone immediately thinks of oranges. And oranges are a great source of vitamin C, but so are bell peppers and broccoli and strawberries and kale and pineapple and kiwi. So, branching out of what you're typically doing and incorporating more colorful fruits and vegetables into your grocery haul, or if you're a part of a CSA or a local farmer's market. I love this infographic also here because it shows you specifically a breakdown of carbohydrates, what a serving would be of the starchy grains or vegetables. And then on the far left-hand side are the non-starchy. So most people could really benefit from focusing on upping their intake of non-starchy vegetables. So take a look at that list. What do you normally consume? What do you not normally consume? You don't have to think about how much of them you're eating, or most people really don't have to think about how much they're eating. They're very low calorie, they're very nutrient dense, rich in fiber, and you can really eat as much of those as you want. So focus on filling up on most of those. And then, you can take a look at making sure that your starchy grains or vegetables are balanced and you're getting about 3 servings a day of those, as well as 1 to 2 servings of a serving of fruit per day. So I feel like as a dietitian, just in conversation with friends or something I might overhear people talking about at a restaurant, which happened to me recently, was, people are afraid of carbohydrates. And it's like, I'm going low carb, I'm not eating any carbohydrates, and you don't need to cut out carbohydrates, but you just want to make sure that you're choosing nutrient dense carbohydrates. So I don't think it's new news that added sugar and refined processed sugar or refined carbohydrates, like some of the pictures that you see there on the right-hand side of the screen, are things that we should probably limit. So if you've attended any of my classes in the past where I've talked about sugar, bonus points to anyone who wants to add in the chat, how many grams of added sugar should you limit in a day? Pop quiz. So take a second to think about that. As far as fiber, we need to be reaching for a minimum of 35 grams a day. And I will say that, there's a lot of research out there, and there can be benefit to somebody following low carb or even the ketogenic diet, which is basically no carbs, very, 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 very low carbohydrate, and is primarily a very high fat diet. But the research is all over the place when it comes to this. There certainly can be a time and a place where an individual can benefit from that, but the long-term restriction of carbohydrates can lead to chronic elevated cortisol, which can lead to inflammation. And it's not sustainable for most people. So now I am not going to take a look in the chat, but I'll just tell you the answer to the question with how many grams that you should limit in a day is 24. 24 grams of added sugar in a day is what you should be limiting. And then just so you have an approximate amount, a moderate amount of carbohydrates defined as a healthy eating guideline is about 75 to 100 grams per day. It's definitely on the lower end. But for most people, and unless you're an athlete and you're really very active, then it would need to be a little higher. But we want to really eliminate that diet mentality and avoid restrictive eating. That's the goal that I really love to emphasize with any client that I'm working with is, don't have to count calories, don't have to count anything. You're just eating in a way mindfully where you are satiated, you are happy, and that it's balanced. So, we really want to avoid that restrictive eating. When we talk about blood sugar regulation in a balanced diet with moderate amounts of carbs, fat, and protein paired together, we want to keep our blood sugar stable throughout the day. And we do that by adding enough protein, fat, fiber to all of our meals. And we want to avoid those high spikes up and down throughout the day. Those really high spikes up and down is what can lead to poor insulin resistance and even more cravings. And so if you really struggle with blood sugar regulation and cravings, that's indicative that you really need to fine tune either hydration to start with or balancing good quality fat, carbs, and protein and gut health as well. So the goal is to really maintain that, because once we consume way too many carbohydrates or sugar in one meal without the fat, fiber, and protein, the insulin is a fat storage hormone. So when we produce a lot of insulin, it takes that glucose and it shuttles it into our fat, and it's harder to get that out of our fat. We want to be in a constant state where we're just burning that glucose that we've consumed stable throughout the day. Now, this is a great picture that I always love to show that explains what happens when we talk about cholesterol and what the key driver to cholesterol is. It's more complicated than just this, but I think that this picture and explanation really helps to explain what's happening. So an excessive amount of refined sugars and flours and carbohydrate without the fiber and the good fat and protein in the diet, when we have a lot of glucose molecules that are flooding our artery walls, you can see those little, basically like a little crystal. Those are glucose sugar molecules floating around. And what they do is they ding up our arterial walls, and then your body makes cholesterol that then goes to patch up those dings and nicks. And so that is one driver, and one of the biggest drivers to hardening of the artery and high blood pressure and heart disease, right? We don't want to narrow that artery with plaque and cholesterol. We want to keep it nice and flowing so that our blood pressure doesn't go up to have to work harder to pump that blood through, which then if a part of that plaque broke off, that can travel and lead to a stroke. So we know that heart disease and stroke and diabetes are all some of the top key, unfortunately, chronic diseases that cause death and mortality, that we want to really limit that. And so one thing is to really focus on that added sugar and balanced diet so that we're not causing this constant high levels of glucose, and then your body produces that cholesterol to go and patch that up. So we prevent that by managing and eating balanced meals throughout the day. You really want to avoid under eating. And unfortunately, I feel like for people who are trying to lose weight, they may actually be under eating too much, which then can backfire, because if you didn't eat enough in the first part of the day and then you get hungry, and as you're cooking dinner or you're snacking and you've just consumed 500 calories or so of snacks while you're putting dinner on the table, or willpower only does so much. And when you are preventing these low sugar glucose crashes, your willpower is better at doing what it needs to do. And it's making better for you choices versus being in a state of being very hangry and just saying, you know what, heck with it. I really want this. And you're going to go opt for that maybe unhealthy thing that you generally opt for. So on the screen, I've just got a few ideas of what you can snack on when hunger strikes and what some good pairings would be. So just a piece of fruit with some natural nut butter, maybe an almond butter, a no sugar, salt added version. So you've got the protein, you've got the good healthy fat from the nut butter, and then you've got a complex carbohydrate from the whole fruit. The Mary's seeded crackers are a great option, really high fiber, good source of protein as well, with avocado, which is loaded with phytonutrients, fiber, and good healthy fat, or a hummus. Organic Greek yogurt plain, topped with some pumpkin seeds, which are loaded with magnesium, zinc, iron, protein, fiber. You could opt for maybe a cinnamon flavor just to give a little extra flavor there to your yogurt. And then, veggies, can't go wrong with any kind of veggies paired with a handful of nuts. Walnuts would be ideal. And then a trail mix with some dark chocolate or a hard-boiled egg with maybe some roasted sweet potato that you had left over with a dollop of salsa. That tends to be a very go-to snack or lunch for me when I'm in a rush. I love a good hard-boiled egg with a little side of potatoes and a dollop of salsa on top. Super easy, very quick, inexpensive, and delicious and nutritious. So, okay, let's jump into talking about omega-3 fatty acids and omega-6 fatty acids. So omega fatty acids are essential polyunsaturated fats. And when we say they're unsaturated, when we say that they're essential, that means that your body doesn't make them. You have to consume them in food in order to get them. So they're essential for health. You need them. You need omega-3, you need omega-6, and you also need omega-9. We're not going to talk about omega-9 today, but omega-3, most people are not getting enough omega-3. We're getting plenty of omega-6s because omega-6 is primarily linoleic acid, and it's found in almost everything. So refined oils, even just not refined oils also, but more from the refined oils, refined foods, processed foods. Omega-6 is just basically in everything. We're not deficient in it, but what we want to do is we want to consume a little bit less of it and a little bit more of omega-3 to balance out that ratio. Most Americans have about a 1:20 ratio, and ideally we need about a 1:4 ratio. So if we reduce the processing, reduce the refining, and up those good quality omegas, we're going to put ourselves in a better anti-inflammatory state and less of a pro-inflammatory state. So we recommend a minimum of the American Heart Association, I shouldn't say we, the American Heart Association recommends 2 servings of fish per week. Now, some people opt to not eating fish. I've worked at a grocery store for 8 years, and the amount of people that I met that just don't like fish, completely understandable. I do have to say, it makes it harder to get those omega-3 fatty acids because cold water fatty fish are the #1 sources of omegas in food. So you want to get your bang for your buck. It's great to opt for those cold water fatty fish like salmon, halibut, tuna, herring, sardines, anchovies. I'm going to tell you, if I don't remember, remind me, I'm going to tell you about a recipe I'm going to be making later today with anchovies. Loaded with omega-3 fatty acids, as are pasture-raised eggs. So pasture-raised means that the chickens have been eating grass and that the grass is actually a good source of omega-3 for the diet, therefore it passes it on, and pasture-raised organic eggs are higher in omega-3 fatty acids. Eggland's Best adds flax to their chicken meal, so that they can market and label as a claim on Eggland's Best Eggs, that they're higher in omega-3 fatty acids because of the feed that the chickens are eating. Extra virgin olive oil, walnuts, flax seeds, chia seeds, hemp seeds are plant-based sources. So those are considered ALA, alpha linoleic acid forms of omega-3. And I didn't mention, but omega-3 is broken down to EPA and EHA. Those are the most impactful forms that's broken down in your body that is utilized for brain health, inflammation, healing, cell permeability, the shape in the membrane holding the cells together. When it comes to the plant-based sources, great source. However, that ALA has to get broken down, and only about 6% of that ALA is transformed to the usable form. So they're not as impactful, although they're very healthy, and I recommend consuming them. It's just harder to really truly meet that. Now, most people who might be following a very healthful diet to begin with, very clean, I'll say, and very nutritious, and already minimizing all of the things that maybe most dietitians and health professionals tell you to stay away from, then you probably have a pretty good balance with that. But if you're not eating nutritiously and consuming a lot of high refined oils and still getting a lot of omega-6s in the diet, thinking that you're just going to add a little bit of chia, flax, and walnut to get that up might not be as significant enough. Although, again, like I recommended, highly recommend them. Still a good source of protein and fiber and unsaturated, good, healthy fat, but not as impactful as cold water fatty fish. So this here is just a very simple briefer. I could go into more depth on this, but the key points I want people to understand that have a huge impact on inflammation is understanding different oils and the smoke points of those oils. The amount of times that I've heard people or seen people or met people who are using extra virgin cold pressed olive oil to make their own healthy marinade, like an Italian based marinade, that they're then marinating, let's say chicken, that then goes on a high grill in the summertime. You are taking that very delicate extra virgin olive oil, which doesn't have a high smoke point, and you are now putting it on a 500, 600, 700 degree grill, and that is smoking. It smokes over 350 degrees, give or take, and it then oxidizes, right? And so we talked about oxidation earlier. All those antioxidants have to come and remove that now toxic free radical from your body. So we do not want to be cooking at high temperature heat or even roasting, right? Not to pick on Rachel Ray, but she'll say, put in the oven at 425 degrees with EVOO. And it's like, well, probably not the best oil to be roasting at 425 degrees. So cold food preparation, if you're baking in the oven at 350 degrees or less, that's fine, but not high heat. Don't put it in a pan as a nonstick agent. Turn it on high. Not the best option for you. Flaxseed oil, super high in omega-3 fatty acids, but very low smoke point. So you don't want to heat it. It's cold food preparation or drizzling after the fact, like a salad dressing or something. And then moderate oils, you can choose a refined oil. So they refined, right? We want to minimize the amount of refined foods. There is a time and a place for refined oil, olive oil. It's still a very healthy oil, although it's not as nutritious and it's refined. They have to remove some of the purity to it so that it can withstand a higher smoke point. So it's lost some of its nutritional value. They've obviously added different solvents and agents and different, I don't want to say bleaching solutions, but solutions to the product to refine it down so that it can withstand a higher smoke point. So fine to use, but you don't want to make that your primary oil. If you do need to do something on high heat, like high temperature sauteing, it's fine to use. What would be better is avocado oil. You don't want to make avocado oil your primary. I still would recommend extra virgin olive oil cold press as your standard for most things, but then cooking higher temp avocado oil, it's monounsaturated, It is also refined. They still have to do some refining. Obviously, all of these products are refined. Olive oil is not an olive, right? An olive is an olive, and they've refined it down to olive oil. So all these products are still refined, although still nutritious. Just understand that, as far as soybean oil, canola oil, grapeseed oil, peanut oil, those are all very highly refined and high in omega-6 fatty acids. So even for snacks, for granola, for cereals, for breads, for most processed foods, anything you look at, if it has those types of oils in it, we want to be opting for choosing better for you products that maybe don't have as many refined oils in them. Of course, there's time and a place for various things, but just taking a look at how much you're consuming throughout the day, crackers, cookies, things like that are all going to have that. Obviously, we want to stay away from trans fatty acids, hydrogenated oils. Those should be completely eliminated, and we shouldn't be consuming any hydrogenated oils or trans fats at all, because we know that they are very inflammatory and they are cancer causing, and they're just really not good for your health. So, if every once in a while you want to have an Oreo or something like that, that's fine, but not something you want to be making as part of your regimen on a regular basis. I think most products are realizing that people know that we shouldn't be consuming them, and they're working really hard at getting rid of them. But, a lot of the prepared foods and things, especially baked goods and things like that, are going to have those things in there. So you want to take a look at that. Love this seafood nutrition guide. It just gives you a quick snapshot of where you're going to get your bang for your buck for those omega-3 fatty acids. So on the far left-hand side of the screen, you're going to see a list of different types of fishes that have over 100 milligrams a day. And you want to be opting for about 2 to 3 grams a day of omega-3 fatty acids. So there, you get one serving, and that's why we say, 1 to 2 fish servings per week. And then, far right hand side, you can see, shrimp. I think a lot of people eat shrimp, very typical fish people consume, but not really high. Either is cod. Both really great, lean sources of protein, but they don't jam pack in the omega-3 fatty acids like the things on the left. So again, I briefly talked about not the egg earlier, about the pasture raised. You can kind of see here where it talks about cage-free, free range, organic. Cage-free really doesn't mean much as far as labeling. It means they have access to get out of the cage for a very minimal amount of time. Doesn't mean they actually do. Free range is a little bit better, but pasture raised is ideal. And then, like I mentioned, some brands will tell you on the package whether they feed their, what they feed their chickens. So you can take a look at that. And I will say, right, so as far as cholesterol, eggs have been ridiculed up and down for years on end about dietary cholesterol. And we know that dietary cholesterol is very different from your body's serum blood cholesterol. Your body makes and breaks down its own cholesterol on its own. Doesn't mean that you should be eating a ton of cholesterol. Cholesterol only comes from animal products. So if you're consuming a lot of animal products, you are going to get more cholesterol in the diet. Some people are better at absorbing cholesterol, which isn't a good thing. And some people are less absorbers, which is a better thing. So there's different genetic genes that can tell you whether you're a cholesterol absorber or not. And that really plays a role in looking at personalized nutrition and looking at genetics and nutrigenomics. And that is a very exciting field in the future. And I think that's really how we're going to help people to eat better, is really looking at their genes. Why one day is one thing good and one day the next thing they come up with a research study that says it's bad. And it's because we're not really looking at people's genetics. And why, maybe one year they had a lot of people that were cholesterol absorbers, and that's why it came out bad. And the next year they had a lot of people in the study who weren't cholesterol absorbers, and it came out where it was fine. So we're not really looking at that, but a lot of research is coming out. So walnuts, great source, one of the only nuts that has a lot of omega-3 fatty acids, making it a good source of omega-3. So if you're choosing nuts, obviously get a variety, but walnuts would be superior in terms of their anti-inflammatory omega-3 content. And so you can chop some on a green salad. I'm making later today a kale salad, and I'm going to make my own Caesar dressing that's a little better for you. And I'm going to use, I am going to use mayonnaise. I have 2 different mayonnaise here just to show you how to read the food label. And this one seems like it's better because it tells you right on the front that they're using extra virgin olive oil and Hellmann's. But if you read a little further, water's the first ingredient, and then it's olive oil, canola, soybean, so forth and so on. So it's probably pretty equal amounts ish of the canola, and they're cutting it with canola and soybean. Don't be confused and think that this is just made with olive oil, because it's not. This Primal Kitchen brand uses only avocado oil in it, which would be superior in terms of a lot of the standard ones that you can find at a typical grocery store. So I'm going to make my own Caesar dressing. I'm going to use a little bit of Parmesan cheese, anchovies, because anchovies goes into a Caesar, lots of fresh ground black pepper, lots of fresh lemon, infused lemon olive oil. You can get Arison Oils and Vinegars, which is located actually in Bloomfield. Tom and Denise own the business. You can go and get one of their products, lemon infused olive oil, and oh, what did I forget? The anchovies, I said, garlic, lots of garlic in there, which is anti-inflammatory. And I'm going to put that on some massaged kale leaves with chopped walnuts and a little bit of breadcrumb. That is hands down one of my favorite go-to salads lately. And I'm getting in lots of those omega-3 fatty acids by adding in a couple of those wonderful nutritious oils and nuts. So just you can see there on the screen a few other ways you could use walnuts. Adds a nice little crunch. Obviously can't really talk about, I'm not going to go into detail with this. I believe there's probably a previous recording of a probiotic class which dives into deeper into this particular topic. But the goal here is we've got to be cutting back on processed foods, things that can cause dysbiosis, refined sugars where the bacteria like to eat all of those. We want to be providing our body with fermented foods. So a good quality fermented yogurt, fermented vegetables like kimchi, sauerkraut, kombucha has been all the rage over the last few years because it's a fermented tea. Those all have probiotics, and so we want to replenish our digestive systems with good quality probiotics that our body needs in synergistic effect with those fibers to continue to thrive and do what it needs to do. So that's my message here is eat more fermented foods. And I've got here on this screen, I'll go back to the other one in just a second, a list of the different probiotic foods that are widely available in most grocery stores. And then equally, you need good quality prebiotic foods so that those probiotics use the prebiotics as food to continue to grow and thrive. So take a look at those lists. Those are where you're going to get most bang for your buck for both probiotic and prebiotic. And then I'm just going to briefly mention here that all of these different triggering things that can cause intestinal damage to your intestinal mucosal line. So an overburden of blood sugar issues, infections, overuse of antibiotics, killing off all of those good for you probiotics, stress, toxins, things like that, food allergies, create intestinal damage and can lead to what they call leaky gut syndrome. So when those things leak through and your digestive system becomes less permeable, those foreign bodies enter into your circulating immune system, into your arterial wall, and your body goes into fight mode and saying, hey, this isn't supposed to be in here. We got to get it out. And so that is what can lead to inflammation. That is what can lead to autoimmune disorder. This could really be a whole conversation in of itself. A lot of research coming out on this, but antibiotics are overused, unfortunately. And once you do that, you kill off all the good probiotics. So you really have to focus on adding back in those probiotics and replenishing your body so that it can maintain that intestinal mucosal lining and absorb food properly and do what it needs to do. And I think that this is also a key driver to food sensitivities, gluten sensitivities. I'm not going to open up that whole conversation today. A lot of philosophies out there about that. Gluten in and of itself is not bad for you, but I think that this could be an underlying root cause to why somebody may have a gluten sensitivity. And so really finding a practitioner who can dive deep and help look at all these things, I think is really important. Quercetin is a fantastic, it's like the underdog. I feel like it doesn't get enough attention, but it definitely can inhibit inflammation. And so go capers, go onions. I love adding chopped walnuts with fresh herbs. I call it my salsa verde. I've shared it in the past in different programs, but you basically mix some fresh herbs, capers, garlic, walnuts, lemon, hemp seeds, olive oil, or flax, chop it all up, and then put it over some roasted broccoli, roasted cauliflower, cucumbers, any kind of vegetables really, and then, or put it over some salmon. Super delicious, so tasty, absolutely love it, and loaded with those omega-3s, the quercetin, phytonutrients, all around powerful, nutritious super food. Magnesium, I spoke about it earlier. Most people are deficient. So quinoa, whole grains, almonds, cashews, eggs, pumpkin seeds, dark chocolate, all real good sources. Spinach. So go for the dark chocolate, 70% or more. Did a whole talk all about chocolate. I don't know if anybody attended that one, but it was an hour of me talking about chocolate. So 70% or better would be best. It has less sugar, less milk, less other added ingredients and things like that in it. And certainly is going to have more of those inflammatory antioxidant components. Vitamin D, what I want to say here is if you have never had your vitamin D levels checked or haven't had them checked in a while, recommend it and then supplement accordingly. It's hard to find vitamin D in food sources or adequate amounts. You really got to get it from the sunlight, and your body utilizes that to transcribe it into its usable form. Almost everybody is deficient, so highly recommend getting your vitamin D levels checked and then supplementing accordingly. I will say here that for people who are not on blood thinners, and maybe discuss with your doctor the option for taking a vitamin D supplement with K2 in it. K2 helps to take calcium and shuttle it into the bone where it belongs. So the really great synergistic effect when they're taken together. It helps to lower the risk of arterial artery, hardening up the arteries, and it's fat soluble. So anytime you're taking vitamin D, you want to take it with a meal that has fat in it. Don't take it on an empty stomach. It needs fat to help absorb. So always take it with a meal that has fat. Go green tea. Green tea has so many wonderful properties to it. So does black coffee. Actually, as far as the number one antioxidant in American diet is coffee. And it's very interesting because a lot of people drink coffee, but they're not eating vegetables, they're not eating fruits. And unfortunately for some, the coffee is their number one antioxidant. So coffee is not necessarily bad if you're sensitive to caffeine. Obviously, that's a very individualized situation, but you want to limit to less than 400 milligrams a day for a healthy individual. That's what's recommended. And then the green tea has L-theanine in it, and it helps to reduce and create a really relaxing stress response. We talk about inflammation. A lot of people have probably heard about turmeric, which is called the golden spice. absolutely has a significant research to support its inflammatory benefits, anti-inflammatory benefits, and it is best taken when you pair it with black pepper. The bioactive ingredient in it is called pepperine, and that helps to increase the curcumin, which is the active ingredient in turmeric, by up to 2000%. So when you're consuming turmeric, consume it with ground black pepper, and you will get the bang for your buck. Staying hydrated, very, 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 very important, if not the most important thing. 75% of Americans are chronically dehydrated. So make sure you're getting in lots of water in the first half of the day and not making up in the last half of the day. I put this on here because I would love to dive in a little bit more deep in talking about different inflammation testing. Some of you probably say, well, how do I know if I'm inflamed? How do I know what's going on really deep down inside of you on a cellular level? Well, there are different tests that can be taken. The HSCRP, CRP is a very common inflammatory marker, but HS means high sensitivity. So high sensitivity CRP is a great inflammatory marker, as well as all these other things. Not all physicians are open to testing some of these things, but Quest Lab inherited and bought Cleveland Heart's test, and that includes an omega-3 fatty acid component. So there's lots of different names for different test panels when it comes to inflammation. But if you use Quest as your lab, you could ask and talk to your doctor about the option for testing that advanced biomarker testing for inflammation, omega-3, the advanced cardio IQ, which talks a little bit about that includes some of these markers in it. And then I really, really wanted to sneak this in. I hope I have a few extra minutes. There is some really exciting emerging research coming up about SPMs. It's called Specialized Pro-Resolving Mediators. And the research is just astounding. They're looking at different clinical applications to help with chronic inflammatory response syndrome, rheumatoid arthritis, osteoarthritis, and the impact that taking some of these specialized supplements can help to drive down inflammation. So I'm not going to go into too much detail. The more information that I get on this, maybe it can be a future discussion in the future, talking about inflammation more in depth or something. I'm not sure, but do a little bit of research on your own. Specialized pro-resolving mediators, SPMs. It's very exciting. I think this is going to be a new tool for physicians to use. It's almost like, I probably shouldn't say this, but it's almost like omega-3 fatty acids on steroids. So it's a component of that. And it's very exciting to read the research that's coming out and to see the benefit that it's having at resolving some chronic issues. So fish oils may not offer the same action because I mentioned earlier that EPA, the DHA, those are the really main important factors as far as omega-3 fatty acids, and they're the precursors for those SPMs, but they really don't possess the same qualities. So basically, as a result, the SPMs are having a better impact at helping versus omega-3 fatty acids with some of those specific clinical indications or applications that I mentioned on the previous slide. So what are you going to do today after listening to all of this information? You're going to maybe create yourself a SMART goal. So a lot of people say, Shana, I want you to help me to eat healthier. I want to lose weight. My goal is to gain muscle. My goal is to sleep better. My goal is I'm going to work out more. My goal is to eat more vegetables. These are all not SMART goals. They're great results, great end results, but your goal is how are you going to get there? Very specific, measurable goals to figure out how you're going to get there. Couple examples is if your goal is to lose weight or decrease cholesterol or blood pressure, your broad goal is, those are your broad goals. Your broad goal is the increase the fiber, increase the vegetables. But your specific goal is I'm going to eat oatmeal for breakfast 3 times a week. I'm going to eat 2 servings of vegetables for lunch and dinner every day. I'm going to walk for 30 minutes a day 5 times a week, really breaking it down into a very measurable and specific goal. So think about what you need to improve and how you can break that down into a specific goal and stick to that until you accomplish it. And then you can always create another small goal to get yourself there. This is just a quick snapshot of most of the things that we talked about today in terms of breaking down the basics. And again, breaking down the basics of what we spoke about today and summarizing it, including more fruits and vegetables, mostly non-starchy, getting more fiber, reducing the sugar. Ask yourself if you're having some digestive problems, because you might need to talk to a practitioner about how to resolve that. Looking at your omega-3 intake and where you can sneak in some more. Getting a variety of colors, getting enough water, breathing, which I don't think I did this entire time. And are you interested in digging and learning more? And if you are, I think on this next slide, I have given you my email address here. I thank you for today, and I hope that you all took something from this. We're going to open up the chat here.